look at their program and get ideas without your boss knowing what you said you needed help with. When you come in to help people, it's not as a leader of that college, it's a partner with each of you. I worked in a unit in a public university, a large university in Brisbane, for a few years, and that was one of our rules. Your boss will never know what we talked about. That's fair. That way you're free to ask the right questions, right? I'm not there to judge you, I'm there to help you. And secondly, one thing that a high school last year hired me to do is some teachers who were just wanting to do a little better in their teaching, or maybe their boss wanted them to do a little better in their teaching, I don't know which. They would have me come into their class for several days and just watch and write down what I saw. And then we'd talk about, because things are happening in your classroom that you do not see. And sometimes a strange pair of eyes in the back who sees what's happening, who's not paying attention, and talking about how would you engage that student. It's not as a judgment, but as a partnership. One of my gurus in teaching and learning, Daniel Stufflebeam, had this statement that was so important. As an evaluator, a person like myself, my job is not to prove, but to improve. I never come to prove you're doing a good job or a bad job, but every program, every teacher, every church has something they could improve in. Isn't that right? And our job is to find out who. One of the large corporations in the country I grew up in had this statement for all their leaders. Look, for every 5 decisions we make, 3 are going to be excellent and 2 are going to be bad decisions. Our job is to find out which 2 bad decisions we need to change. No shame in finding something that's not working right. But there is shame if you'd like to try to pretend it's okay and don't do anything about it. So that's where we come from. Can you work with that okay? And if I ever come back, if you want me to come and sit in your class and just talk to you about it, you comfortable with that? You trust me enough? I've been here. I know what it's like. I taught in the Bible college here 50 years ago, and one of the classrooms is still there. And changed a lot since then. I hope you're not using the same textbooks as we did then. I don't think so. It was Pidgin then. But so I know what it's like, and I really value what you're doing, because that's where my heart is, teaching and learning. I just wanted to go through 6 convictions that really drive me. That's just as both a teacher and a leader in the church, very quickly, but they are fundamental to the approach that I take in developing programs and people. And the first one is this: planning and doing are godly activities. I know some people who think they don't need to plan because God will come and rescue them on the day and give them what to say or what to do. I know pastors who don't prepare, and they think they've done a marvelous job, but the people know they didn't. They're not ready. The only time I found that God really came and rescued me from a sermon that I wasn't prepared for is when I had no warning. Then God will rescue you. If you didn't have a chance, He'll help you out. But if you have the opportunity, God says it's also your responsibility, along with my own, to prepare well. I think you would all agree with that, right? And doing things some people think spiritual activity is praying. It is. But sometimes God says, well, now you've prayed a while, go and do something about it. And I think that this is where some Christians get it wrong. They think the more spiritual you'll become, the more impact you'll make. You will, if you at the same time continue to be more active from that spiritual life. God doesn't want us to just let Him do all the heavy lifting. When He said, my yoke is easy and my burden is light, an easy yoke had a big ox and a little trainee ox carrying the same yoke. And the big ox carried most of the load, but you know what? The little ox had to carry some of it. And that's what God is waiting for us to do, is to carry our small part of the yoke. So I think we'll go with that. We do want to flow with the Spirit, But someone says, well, you know, if I prepare too much for Sunday morning sermon, I will inhibit the movement of the Spirit, and he can't tell me what to do. That's not true. When you're preaching, sometimes God just puts something in your heart and you change it. You don't have to preach exactly as you're prepared, but you have to be ready. And I think the same with teaching. Sometimes during a lesson, you have to change it because you see that's not quite getting across. But if you don't have something prepared to start with, you're in trouble. I know I was head of a department of teachers, and I had to call some kids out who weren't doing the right thing. And I said, what's going on? And they said, well, if he doesn't care enough to prepare, why should I care enough to listen? Kids will be brutally honest. And, you know, what do you say? Well, yeah, well, you still have to listen. No, really, we owe it to the people we teach to be well prepared. Secondly, an inspirational thought. You don't build through shame. Teachers that rip into their students and keep talking down to them and making them ashamed and being harsh, that's not how you build people. You build people through trust. And if people see, I trust you, and when I need to speak to you about an area of improvement, it's not because I'm judging you as a person. It's simply because I see so much potential in you that together we can help you become a better person. And I think that's really important for pastors, for teachers, for Bible college leaders. You must learn to build that atmosphere of no guilt, but they feel safe in your class. They're not going to be attacked. They're not going to be made fun of. If it's someone who really gets embarrassed reading out loud, you're not going to ask them to read out loud and just force them to anyway. You're going to make sure that your classroom is safe for every student. That's basic, but I think today I'm talking about basics. The other thing I really want to stress today is I don't want you to have a monologue, which is one way. Stop me. If you have a story you want to share or you want to disagree, I'm old enough, I know you can disagree and you could be right, you know. That's okay. I'm not going to go home and not sleep tonight because you thought what I said wasn't right. Okay, and you're the same, right? It's okay to disagree as people. But we do it in the spirit of accepting each other. We just don't always accept each other's ideas. That's okay. So learn to build an atmosphere in your class where people feel trusted and safe. And even a student at the high school level, for instance, I know some of you have been there, or primary, you don't build through shame, but you help them see, I see more than, you're better than that, is one term I often use. You know what? Kids rise to that a lot better than say, you're just a little scalawag. You know, you know what you're like. That doesn't help, but you say, I see something in you that's better than that. Let's try to get up to it, okay? And I do. The other thing, one of the things I think is so often we stress doing the process and doing the right thing so much in the right way, we forget that there's a purpose to what we're doing. And we have to always keep our eye on the goal, not on our steps toward that goal. And so often in ministry and education, people get hung up on doing it right, but forgetting what they're trying to do. What is our big outcome that we're trying to do? What are we as a Bible college here for? Some thoughts. What are we trying to do? The one big thing we're here for. What do you say? Someone brave? I don't want to embarrass anyone, but I want you to feel safe, but not too safe. What are we here for?
Field and develop.
Sorry?
Field and develop young people to become next leaders.
Yes, that's right. To develop leaders in the church, and also in this context, maybe particularly pastors and teachers. Never lose our sight on, we are not here to dispense just knowledge. We're here to develop people in ministry. That's the whole person. You care about their psychological well-being. You care about their physical well-being. But you care about their academic development too. Academics are not evil. I heard one guy, actually I was in Europe, and we were talking about who could be the chaplain, and someone said, no, I don't want an academic because I want a spiritual person. Oh, they said it to the wrong person. Because I said, there are carnal academics, but there are carnal non-academics too. And there are spirit-filled academics who only did their research and hard work because that's what they thought would equip them better to serve God. But their heart's just as pure before God as the guy who can't read. It's not about that. Let's not get hung up on anything except we want to prepare people for ministry at the level, the highest level to which they can be equipped. If someone's capable of degree level study, but they think it's easier to do a certificate, you go give them a good kick for me, will you? Tell them, you're better than that. Your people deserve your very best. And if certificate's where you are, praise God, God will send you to a congregation that's just right for what they need. And there are churches that are better off under a certificate level pastor than a degree level. I know they still talk the same language in some respects, but you can teach degree people to actually communicate with those people without degrees, and that's one of our big missions in preparing pastors. You don't have to talk to them all like theological students. They're not. And you got to break it down and use the language they understand and the frameworks they understand, but teach the same wonderful truth for God. And that's the key thing, to be able to equip people who minister to the very people they're sent to, and at the level people can understand. That's our main goal. I don't think we should ever forget our purpose is to prepare pastors, missionaries, other Christian workers. And our whole program is geared toward that. It's not geared toward academics, it's geared toward that. Then academics, spiritual formation, all the other things we do is a part of that, but we can never forget what our eyes on. And we get people in ministry even when they're in college. I know you do that, right? Why do people go out? I know when you go down the highway and I look at church after church that says Church of the Nazarene, I remember those were all planted by students. They were. If this college weren't here, there'd be a lot fewer churches in this area. I'm not bragging about us. I'm just saying that's true. And, that helped the church, but it also helped the students who had already planted the church before they ever graduated. And they had people here who could tell them what they could do better. And you know all that about that. But we're not preparing people for ministry, but we're preparing people in ministry. We want to make sure they're in ministry even while they're here. This is not a convent of isolation. Okay, now we'll just take a breather. How are you all doing? All right.
One question.
You okay? You don't mind me just being this basic to you for this time? I can come and give you a high educational theory next time, and I will, but let's start here. Yeah.
Yes,
Question.
question there. Regarding academic and spirit people
Yeah.
that you have just said. How am I going to interpret someone that is filled with the spirit? If I am in the physical world, what are some symptoms or some of the things that really will help us to identify a leader who is filled with the spirit?
How do you identify it?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll open that to other people to talk about it too. How do you identify a leader that's spirit-filled? We know they have their degrees, but how do we know if they're really spiritual, spirit-filled people? How do you know? What do you think? What do you think? You can talk. Sorry? Yeah.
The way they live their life.
The way they live. And and also their passion for, do they really care about people? You think? But I think the Bible's very clear, by their fruits you will know them. What's their past track record? You know, and has the ministry been about them or about service? You know, do they really want to feel important, or did they want to do things and they didn't care if people knew about it or not? I think that's one thing we really have to build into our people, don't we? You don't have to have credit for everything you do. The number of people that have taken credit for some things I opened in Kenya, amazing. The people who said it was their idea to open the university were even against it when we started. But that's okay if they want to take credit, now they'll keep it going. That's okay. It doesn't matter who takes credit. We've got to teach the students this. It matters what happens for God. And if someone else gets credit for what you do, oh, so what? In heaven, the Lord will say, well done, and that's all we want. And that's, okay, we're keeping going here because we have a lot to do today. I think it's really important, especially at this time when your colleges are in a bit of transition. You've got new leadership, you've got probably some things will change and some dynamics. But this is a presentation I give to everyone when I talk about my convictions. It's not for you. Nostalgia for the past does not build the kingdom. You know, we're not in the past, and it's different now. And if I could say, oh, I remember 50 years ago, mercy, we had revivals. Yeah, could have been. Maybe my memory's even better than the reality. I don't know. But that's not what you build on. You build on the opportunities that God gives us right now. And that's so important. I think people get tired of us talking about what used to be. They want to know what's possible now, where God called me. And, you know, it's not the same as it was before. We don't want it to be the same as before. But we want to know we're okay with not looking to the past. Another thing is, comparison does not build the kingdom. Oh, have you heard how much better the Wesleyan Methodists are doing than us? You know, my word, what are they doing that we're not doing? You know, that's okay to learn from each other, but each denomination has their own mission before God, and we just have to say, God, are we doing everything that you've given us as a church to do? It doesn't help to compare ourselves to others. The only comparison I feel is valid is to compare ourselves against the call God placed upon our life. Am I being faithful to the call? And I think each of you have a call, I would assume so. You know what it is, right? When the days get tough, what keeps you going? The sense of call. There have been some jobs I just wanted to walk away from. Then God took me back. But when I called you, you said yes. You didn't say yes for the good times. You said yes. So we want students to really understand they must know that they have a call. If they're not called to their particular ministry, they shouldn't do it. Because God knows who's prepared in the heart, you know. If they don't have a call, then let them do service, but don't put them in a role where it's going to demand people who, when the chips get down and it gets really hard, they go back and say, but my call will not let me walk away. And so what used to be does not build the kingdom. I'm not going to tell you any stories about the mission station 50 and 40 years ago. I'm not. Some people, you know, Facebook, they can talk about it, and that's fine. Nostalgia is wonderful at certain times when we rejoice on where God's brought us. But sometimes let's forget the past, keeping our eyes on the future, because this is a new day. You know, when I walk in here, almost the whole group is Papua New Guinean. Isn't that right? That's not the way it used to be. That's wonderful. And suddenly now Papua New Guinea is saying, this is God's in our church. You know, we don't have to just do what the mission tells us, though we respect the mission, work together. But this is a church for Papua New Guinea. Isn't that exciting? And you're going to take up places that it's never thought of before. I believe that, don't you? I believe there have been good days, and the footprint of the Church of the Nazarene is well known in Papua New Guinea. I would say that is one of the major spiritual forces. When people talk about our church, they somehow know us, whereas where I live, we're a small church, they don't know us as well. But I believe we can't say, well, that's where we are. We say, now, God, where do we go from that great base? How many more villages will we reach for Christ? How many more churches could we plant where they don't have a witness? Maybe this is just the foundation from which God will explode. And that's why your Bible college has to have extension centers, campus, all kinds of ways of preparing workers. Because I really believe there's going to be a moving of the Spirit on the church in Papua New Guinea, and it's going to take off like you never imagined before. Don't you believe that? I believe that with all my heart. And that's why I want to put everything I can into helping you, even in your college curriculum and whatever you're doing. Conviction 6, you build your hope not on the problems, but on the opportunities and call of God. You know, some people say, well, we can't plant a big church here because the people are very hostile to the gospel. It's a very dark culture, a very dark tribe. We can try, but it won't work very well, but we'll try. What kind of church do they get? Well, they don't get much because they don't expect much. I was doing a mission service in a church in Mormon territory in the edge of Idaho and near Utah, where the Mormon church, you know the Mormon church? Huge. And in this town, 60% of the town's people attended worship every Sunday at the Mormon church. And so pastors come in and say, well, you know, we won't expect a lot because 60% are already in church in the Mormon church. That only leaves 40%. Maybe some of them aren't interested. So that doesn't leave many people to work with. One young couple went in and the guy said, you know, to his congregation, we've been saying this for so long and we're pretty small. He said, you know what I think we should start thinking? There are 40% of this community that don't go to the Mormon church. They need to go to church. Let's reach the 40%. And I was there on a Sunday when a young couple who had left the Mormon religion had Mormon relatives, and they found the Lord at this Nazarene church, and they wanted to be baptized. And they said, well, first of all, can we bring our relatives? So at this church that was in the midst of Mormon territory, they had a baptismal service on the Sunday morning, and it was full of Mormons. All the relatives were Mormons. And they gave their testimony of how they found Christ and what it was meant to them. And they were bringing in new people constantly. Why? Because they didn't look at the problem, but the opportunity. We look at that here. You have some restrictions here. You just get in the middle of a PowerPoint and the power goes off. That could happen today, couldn't it? You never know. Or maybe you prayed hard and it won't happen. I don't know. But, you know, power outages. And I remember when we opened the university in Kenya, we had a saying, the day that the automobiles operate and the electricity's on and the phones work on the same day is a day of celebration. You know, it seemed like every day it was either the phones were out or the phone. There was only one phone for the whole campus back then. Or the electricity was off for the day or two or three or four, or the cars just wouldn't work. And you know, in our first 2 years of opening the university, there was one day when all three worked at the same time. Well, you know, did that stop us? Just like it doesn't stop you. You have the same situation. Well, so what? God, I don't think the apostles had great electricity, you know, and their cars were pretty slow, you know, a horsepower, whatever. And so we look not at what could hold us back, but upon the great opportunities we have. Well, that's pretty basic, but it's okay. I think really getting our hearts right toward the students and having a positive attitude toward the people we work with is so important because they can tell if we love them or not. I was teaching in a high school that had a lot of indigenous students, and one of the students, he was indigenous, he was Aboriginal from Australia, and he was coming to my class and doing the right thing, but he's skipping everyone else's class, going out and hiding and smoking someplace or whatever. I said, well, what's going on? And he said, I can come to your class because you like me. I said, well, they like you. He said, no, they don't. I said, how do you know? He said, I can see it in their eyes. You know, well, how can I argue? Just don't look at their eyes, okay? No, what I'm saying, and I'm not bragging about myself, I'm just saying I did love him. And he could tell it. And a lot of teachers loved them, but this school just happened to have too many that didn't. And so somehow when we build this atmosphere of trust and love and acceptance, and when we need to correct a student, it's not to put them down to nothing, but it's to say, that's not good enough. Let's build you up. It makes such a difference in what we're trying to do. And I believe even in Bible college, this can happen. There are some lecturers who just put the students down all the time. They're afraid to ask a question in case they look dumb. You're not like that, I know. But I know some Bible colleges where they are like that. We don't want that. We want every student to feel safe. Well, you want to stand up for just a minute while I change slides here? Yes. And just take a stretch. You're doing